Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command, and I've just seen the final episode of Game of Thrones, and we can talk about it for a moment. I'm in the darkness, just like that Too Dark episode that you all saw some weeks ago, but here's basically my feelings about the final episode. Elaine said it was exactly like making a cup of hot chocolate that you're really, really looking forward to, and then knocking it over before you drink it, and then having to clean it up, and you don't get any hot chocolate. So, so disappointing. Kit Harington said the season was disappointing, and that's absolutely true. Here's, unlike many of the fans, I'd sort of been able, or at least willing to go where the show was taking me up until this episode. Last week when Daenerys becomes the Mad Queen and kills, all the people in the city, with the fiery death and all of those things, I was okay with that. And with this episode, I was okay about till halfway through. And let me tell you the ins and outs of all of this. And, so let's see. And just for background, I've read the Game of Thrones books that George Martin has written. I'm reading the prequel one now. Watched all episodes of Game of Thrones. So here we are at the end. Until there's the prequel and the sequels and the spin-offs and blah, 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 blah. So I was okay with Daenerys going nutty. I was all okay with Grey Worm becoming a monster because of grief. All that stuff, I saw the emotional underpinnings of it, and it was, maybe not my favorite. I mean, back when Daenerys and Jon got together, you thought, oh great, they're gonna, they'll marry and rule together and be wise and be the perfect couple, and it'll be a happy ending. And then of course it's like, but wait, no, she's his aunt. Oh shit, And then last week, if you remember, I was talking about Elaine's predictions and mine, and my predictions were that Jon would end up having to kill Daenerys, that he would not want to rule, so Sansa would rule with Tyrion as her hand, or her advisor, basically, because they, trusted each other and knew each other. That Arya, of course, wouldn't be sitting on the throne, because Arya is not any kind of ruler, she's a loner. And and that and so that was sort of where I was thinking it would go, and one of my subscribers to Mr. Sci-Fi said, no, it's going to be Bran. Bran is going to be on the throne. And I thought, well, what a terrible idea that would be. I mean, essentially, I'll get into why I think it's a terrible idea, but as you all know now, I was right about Jon having to kill Daenerys. And in Sansa does end up becoming a queen, but sort of the queen of the North, not of the Seven Kingdoms. And but there's a ton of stuff that doesn't make sense. So okay, and as I walk through the darkness, and you can barely see me, just like that wonderful episode with the Night King. Okay, here's where I was okay, and here's where I wasn't okay. So essentially, I was okay up until Tyrion getting arrested by Daenerys. Again, it falls into that old cliche. Well, she kills everyone else pretty much instantly. Why didn't she kill him instantly? Well, it's so he can survive. Okay, a little wacky. But okay, so she arrests him. The scene with Jon where Tyrion says, well, your sisters aren't going to bend the knee, and Daenerys is going to kill you and kill them. Essentially, that's what he's inferring, and he says to Jon, you have to make a choice. And I thought it was really interesting that Jon can't go weaponless through the Unsullied, but he can get past the dragon, and I thought that was clever, that would allow him to keep his weapons. And but where I hoped, okay, so then he says, you'll always be my queen, then he stabs her, right, and kills her. So that, for me, and I predicted that because I thought like Jaime Lannister, who killed the Mad King, he would be forced to kill the Mad Queen. He would become the Queen Slayer. Okay, so far so good. But then my thought was, okay, well, how's he gonna rule? How's he going to get past the Unsullied and the Dothraki, for God's sake, who are basically, the Mongols? And my thought was, well, because he's, a Targaryen, the dragon would not harm him. The dragon would serve him, and he would be able to use the dragon as a thing to get the Unsullied and the Dothraki to back off. And at the end, because who's going to support him as king? It would be Arya, Sansa, Tyrion. Essentially, Brienne, essentially everyone else would support Jon as king. They've all been alongside him. They know he's honorable. They know who he is. And so they basically get using the dragon, you get the Dothraki to back off and go back where they came from, with the threat of the dragon. Either you die or you leave, and they know they can't fight the dragon because they've just seen what a dragon can do to the city. And with the Unsullied, it would be, okay, well, again, the threat of you will die. Your choice is die, or we'll give you land, and you can be essentially the Eighth Kingdom. And that would have theoretically at least worked. And Arya said, families, don't forget your family. Family is the most important thing. And then you look at who loves whom. Okay, so Tyrion loved his family, wasn't able to save them. I mean, his brother particularly. Jon loves Arya, loves Sansa. You know, um, and of course Samwell Tarly. He loves him. So I mean, that would have been a good ending. It would have, for me, it would have been satisfying because I don't mind Daenerys going, nutty. I can see where they set that up and they built that, but I do mind. The rest of it because from then on, because Jon stabs Daenerys, she dies. Okay, fine, and then the dragon carries her off, in its claw, and goes off to the ocean, and into the clouds. So one question I had, of course, was, well, if Jon's the only one who saw her being killed, and the dragon flies off with her, how do people know she's dead? I mean, Jon doesn't lie, so I guess he'd say it. But I mean, it just as easily could have said, well, she's gone off to prepare the way, and she's left us in charge, and whatever. But be that as it may. But from that point on, where he stabs her, then of course he's thrown in jail, and all of a sudden you've got this council of all of these people from all these different kingdoms, and it's just like, where did that come from? How does that work? From then on, it totally goes south for me. Because, because think about it, walk through it. Okay, so Jon says, I killed her. And the Unsullied, what would they do? Really, what would they do? They'd kill him. Grey Worm would kill him. Or there'd be a fight to the death or something, but it wouldn't be like, oh, we'll just jail him and try him? They don't try anybody. They don't put anybody on trial. They just kill people. So, doesn't make any sense. They'd kill Tyrion, they'd kill Jon, and then the Unsullied and the Dothraki, I guess, would figure out what to do next, but it wouldn't be, let's call all these other people from all these other lands. The Dothraki don't give a shit about them, and the Unsullied don't care about them either. So it's, that's very questionable and makes no sense at all. But then it's like, okay, well, let's figure out who's going to rule now. Well, okay, so then they say, okay, well, and Tyrion comes up with Bran. Let's have Bran do it. Where's that come from? Why? It seems like the stupidest choice of all. Bran is never there for anybody. Is Mr. Flattened Affect. He's like someone who's had a lobotomy. I mean, he has the one standard answer to everything, which is like, you're where you're supposed to be. And don't feel guilty, don't feel bad, or thank you. And and then he lets people like Theon die for him. But again, it's like I'm the three-eyed raven. Where the hell did he go when the Night King was attacking? It's like that hole is never closed. It's like where on earth did you go? Like, I'll be back in a while. Well, great. Meantime, it's like, let's put this guy as king. He doesn't give a shit about anybody. He can see the future. So why should he be bothered about anything or anyone? And you don't put someone like that in charge. Because it's not that they're a wise person. They're just like kind of gone, absent. I mean, Tyrion would be a better king. Sansa would be a better queen. Jon would be, I think, the best of all. And so it's like, okay, so Bran, for some inexplicable reason becomes king, and then he names Tyrion his hand. And if he and Tyrion ever had a connection, if they ever had an emotional connection or an emotional scene together, I probably, but I can't remember one. Part of it is because the actor who plays Bran is very flat anyway. And so he's never been, someone that you warm to. And also he hasn't won the loyalty or the love of others, and he's just kind of a cold fish. Whereas Tyrion has come through for Sansa. Samwell came through for Jon, and Jon came through for basically everybody, one way or another. So then, adding insult to injury, it's like, okay, well, but we can't let Jon go. We'll let Tyrion go. But so okay, then so Tyrion's going to be the hand, but the people he cares about are gone. So Sansa goes back to the north to be her own queen, and so it's the six kingdoms instead of the seven kingdoms. And for some reason, that's fine, okay. And then it's like, okay, so Sansa's alone, essentially. Arya, for some weird reason, decides to become Christopher Columbus and go, to find other lands beyond the West. And it's like, oh, really? So she, even though she said family, it means everything. The family is super important, and she's been killing all the enemies of her family. Yeah, she ends up being utterly alone at the end. No one has her back. No one she trusts or cares about is with her. It basically ends up, what happened with Daenerys is she ends up pretty much alone, except for Grey Worm, who's emotionally, destroyed. And that's essentially what happens to most of the characters. So Samwell, who loves Jon, ends up with all these other characters that he really is basically unconnected to. Tyrion and the Onion King and so forth. All these other characters, and they end up just kind of bickering. It's supposed to be, I guess, a funny scene at the end. They're bickering, and it looks like they're going to do a terrible job of ruling. They're not going to be wise heads prevailing. They're all disagreeing about trivial shit, like, oh, let's fund the brothels. No, let's fund the ships. No, let's fund the sewers. It's like, what the fuck? And I don't mean to curse, so cover your ears, children, but it's like, these are the people who should be in charge, rather than Jon Snow, who showed himself merciful and a good leader and a man someone would follow at every turn. I mean, so it's okay. So it's Tyrion's the hand, and Bran is just kind of like mentally absent, like, oh, well, I'll Bran will wheel me away. And in what happens to Bran? Who is she with that she cares about? She doesn't particularly care about Bran. Does she even really know Bran? Have they ever had a conversation? I don't remember. But okay, so the people she cares about, who she's been serving, Sansa, Arya, Jon Snow, she's had some connection with, and Jaime died, but I liked where she was writing the history of Jaime, but, that was okay, though she doesn't seem to know to blot wet ink before you turn the page and close the book, so that's all going to be kind of blurred and unreadable, but, c'est la vie, but also it's like, okay, so Jon sent back to the Wall. Well, what's that about? It's like the Wall was there to keep out the wildlings and ultimately the White Walkers. And Jon let the wildlings in to protect them. He killed, and our guys killed all the White Walkers and the dead, the army of the dead. And so what exactly is that wall there for? Jon walks the wildlings back to the north, which is suddenly a forest rather than, the barren landscape it's always looked like. And also, wasn't that huge ice wall melted? I mean, now they show it, miraculously solid again. Well, how'd that happen? Where was the team of people that built that thing back up? And on and on and on. I mean, so here we go. So Jon ends up, he's got his redhead friend, but that guy's always been a loose cannon, a weird one anyway. So he ends up with him rather than with Sam, who is someone who really is a good friend and really, really cares deeply. And Jon's just like an emotional husk. I mean, what's he going to live for? He can't have children. He can't get married. He can't, it's like, and what's his job exactly? Watching for nothing in particular? It's, why is he on the Wall? Because that's where you send people who fuck up? Well, yeah, makes no sense at all. And so then we have Sansa alone, Arya alone, Jon basically more or less alone. All these characters isolated, and someone who's emotionally stunted in charge. It's just a hugely unsatisfying ending. And I'm glad that Tyrion lived. I'm glad Jon lived. I'm glad Sansa and Arya lived. Arya lived. I mean, it's at least some of our favorite characters made it through, but it's just this terribly unsatisfying ending. So anyway, so that's sort of my feeling about this. I'll be posting a lot more soon, but I thought you guys might like to know sort of what I think of all of this. I was okay until about episode what was it? The up until the last half episode, I could have found a satisfactory ending, but man, where they are now. Now at the Nebulas, I suggested something interesting because the fans are saying, let's redo season 8. Well, of course that's not going to happen. There's a petition out to do that, but it's never going to happen. But I was suggesting that what they should do is have a contest where people write a season 8 that would be an audio play, and the best 5 that win, the actors just perform those variant endings, so that the audience can have alternatives. So, anyway, so that's it for everything. That's the end of this version of Game of Thrones. We'll see the prequels and the sequels and the offshoots and all of that. And maybe George Martin will write his version now that this is such an unsatisfactory ending. But we'll see what the future brings. But there are not many shows that have had wholly successful ends. There are very, very few. But this certainly wasn't one of them. So that's it. It's a shame. It's a wonderful cast, wonderful episodes for many, many seasons. And, and I don't know who decided that Bran was going to be the guy and that everyone was going to go off and be isolated. And because all of these characters formed bonds of love, bonds of commitment, bonds of connection. And now it's just like they took a hammer to it and shattered it. And makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. So many of these characters end up, with lives that will be far less meaningful than they should have been. And at least the Hound got to die, as killing his brother, which he'd wanted to do for a long time, and and Daenerys became a bad egg, and she got what she deserved. Though again, an ending where she was a good queen and Jon was a good king would have been very nice. But anyway, that's it for now. We'll talk soon. Much more to come. And subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi and let me know what you think of all of this stuff. Take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye.